Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. Unlearning is a level of self awareness I think some people never reach. We hate in others what we dislike in ourselves. I am grateful to God I found this place called Unlearning, and I hope reading this chapter helps many of you. Christine Beckwith. Today, joining us once again, and gratefully so, not the last, the one and only Christine Beckwith, founder of 2020 Vision. I'm overly dramatic today. Vision for Success.
Let's
Overly
go with it.
excited. It's actually Christine's birthday today. So happy birthday, Christine. And everyone, make sure
Yeah.
you sing happy birthday right now. Today is the recording. But we're talking about Unlearning a Rebirth, Chapter 9, and Finding Honor, a book that has exploded and imploded self-deceit and the darkness in people and
Yeah.
its readers and inspired. So let's start with that quote, right? Unlearning is a level of self-awareness I think some people never reach. What was going through your mind when you were writing that?
Yeah, I mean the whole book is about, obviously, if you look at the title, and you always want your title or your book, I'll say this, to match what the reader's about to experience. And that's a really tall order, by the way. Sometimes when you write a body of work, sometimes it'd be better to write what you're intending and then to come up with the title. I've written the opposing way, which is to come up with my title because I have an idea of what the book is that's going to come out of me. And that title keeps me anchored. So to answer your question, I've got to say this first. Finding Honor, the journey to the truth, it was for me a story, a real story, a real life story about sharing the ultimate journey of self-awareness and personal development. The reason I chose to write a book that kind of was, to date, my tell-all, um, thinking that most of my salacious parts of my life have come and gone because I kind of play it safe these days. I'm not this, I'm still a tenacious bitch, but I'm not a, necessarily irrational one. Um, was realizing the need to seek happiness and success beyond material and money. Now, I want to say this because this sounds like a dichotomy or even a contradiction, possibly. I love money. Money does a lot of powerful and good things. And when you're a good person, you can do a lot of good with it. And so I am not a non-money seeker. I am a wealth seeker, and I'm a very strong business person. But at some point in my life, I found myself really aware that I didn't love myself and that I sought artificial means of what I would say is almost like an addiction that is undiagnosed today in our society. And that is that we know that alcoholism, we know the physical effects of alcoholism, we know what it does, we know it's an addiction, we call it a disease. We know that drug addiction is also a disease. And of course, a lot of people have a hard time with those two things because they say, well, wait a minute, the precursor to the disease is your ability to pick something up or put something down. Well, that's not the point. The point is that if your brain has the addictive makeup, something occurs, psychologically speaking, when you do the drug or do the drink. And what people that are non-drug and non-alcoholics never know is that if your brain is already in the beginning not functioning 100%, because 75 to 80% of mental illness is being self-medicated. And it's not because a doctor said, have a drink, you'll feel better. Have a drug, you'll feel better. It's that it is actually torture, I think, mentally, for a lot of human beings in the world to think the way they naturally think. I think there are people that think sinful thoughts. I think there are people that have overthinking. Think there's people that obsess. I think there's people that can't keep their attention because their mind is wired in such a way that it brings them down 9,000 rabbit holes when they start thinking, and they go completely sideways and they're unable to take actual linear action towards hitting goals and things that they're doing. And we recognize these things in kids, and we recognize them in ourselves as we grow older and wiser and we reflect more. Unlearning, a rebirth, is the biggest chapter. It is also the center chapter of the book. So it is purposely placed in the middle. It is a deep lesson chapter. This chapter itself is a 3-hour workshop, and I have done it many, many times. I'm really excited that I'm doing a lot of workshops with this book right now. And I'm doing a lot of one-on-one work also with very big professionals that are wanting to take this walk that you and I have taken. And so the last part of that is this. Everyone can know what they're messed up about. Everybody can know how they're fucked up. But not everybody can unfuck themselves. Okay. And so I don't know how else to say that. And I don't know if we're going to need to bleep that out, but I'm going to tell you
No
that
bleeps.
I knew I was fucked up in ways that were hurting me, that were alienating people, that were not representing my heart or mind in my speech and my iteration of listening and my interactions with people. When people began to react differently to me than my intended desire, I knew there was a language barrier. And if you're the one speaking and people are acting a certain way, it's your speech that's alienating. And so the last thing I'll say is I'm less focused on being popular and loved by everyone, because I am real and honest. And that is unfortunately a diagnosis that doesn't allow you to have popularity. But the things in this chapter are what I share personally. I needed to change, and I'm still working on. By the way, I've recently read this chapter again in a workshop and realized that every single one of the things I listed that I said I'm unlearning, I'm still a work in progress in every area. It's not like I can just say I did it.
How important do you think it was for you to recognize that you're a work in progress and that we are work in progresses?
Well, I think for me, the effects of doing this and the self-love that I now have, like, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I'm in love with myself, I'm great, and say all these confident things about myself. I will say I don't have a lot of insecurities at this age. I don't. I am really confident about who I am. I take measured steps, but I take them quicker than I ever have. And so I don't spend a lot of time regretting, and I don't take a lot of missteps. So I'm pretty good at operating at an emergent, operating status and getting it right. I think that that's it right there, is that people are constantly, when you're in a place, I listen to people's language, and I talk to people that in a 30-minute conversation, they'll say, I'm sorry 10 times. Not to me, but necessarily they'll say, I'm sorry that, I feel sorry that I feel, and you sit there and you're listening to that language, and you're immediately aware that you're working with somebody that has guilt, and somebody that has shame, and somebody that doesn't believe they're doing the right thing or saying the right thing. And I know they're living in a dark place. They're living in a place when they hang up the phone with me where everything they're doing, they're uncertain of. They're looking for external approval. They're the same people. Listen to me. I have one woman, and I can't name her, but this woman spends money she doesn't have to spend on every single contest that the world puts out. I see her in every contest that there is. And she is so broken and so uncertain of herself. And guess what? She's just pouring water into like a bottomless cup that has a massive hole in the bottom of it. And I was there at some point in my life. I know I was. And the reason I was there is because I had done a lot of selfish things. And I outline in my book and the other chapters that I was driven at some point through physical attraction, and I did some things that I'm not proud of. I did some things that were physically, I say, the brain, heart, and groin are your operating systems. And at one point in your life, one is driving the bus, and then the other's driving the bus, and then the other's driving the bus. And we all know that as we get older, we get wiser, and our brain becomes the strongest operating system. And we can apply logic over physical attraction, and we can apply logic over our heart's desire. And when you're operating from your brain in a logical place, you're making better decisions for yourself. You might not be satisfied physical and the loving desires you have, you become less selfish. And so when you're operating from a place where you're just constantly trying to tell yourself, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great, because for some reason you don't believe that you are, it is just a superficial existence. And so here's the thing. I know I'm a good person today. I believe it. I see it. I drive from a good place. I'm integral. I make good decisions. I don't lie. I don't talk about other people. I don't gossip. I don't share secrets when someone tells me something that they shouldn't say. And so for me, yes, it's been 100% worth it, because I am living in a place where this year businesses are in trouble. Money is waning. There's been a lot. I lost my sister a year ago. And if I didn't have that tenacity of having leveled myself up on a personal development where I'm operating from a place where I really know I'm coming and driving from a good place, I'm pretty sure that a lot of these things would knock me to my knees and I wouldn't have the strength to get back up.
Wow. Well, take building my current company. I
Yeah.
left a high-paying job for non-paying self-employment in a saturated field with a high deficiency rate. How did I step out of the gates on day one? I can tell you, I was dying where I was. I don't even know how it happened, but I was starting to die in my old job, brought on by time and circumstances. Every day was torturous. I felt underappreciated and overlooked for my skill. To onlookers, I appeared to be having one of those hold your breath temper tantrums. The more I think about it, the more I believe there is truth in this perception. It was like brilliant writing.
Yeah,
So many people
it's
could
hard
relate
to
to that
admit.
listening to this.
Yeah, I love listening back to something. Sometimes I'm like, I wrote that. I visit my own writing because, as you know, you've taught me that reading, writing, and talking are therapeutic. And they're the staples of mental, education. I mean, we start with our 3-year-olds here, the alphabet, right? Write your name. It's where it begins. It's where it begins, and it's where it ends. For me, writing, and when I'm not writing a book, I'm writing a book right now, but when I'm not writing a book, I'm journaling. And so I haven't been writing a book for a couple of years. And I've been journaling the whole time in 3 or 4 different journals, because that's just how I stay straight. The truth is, during the time that people were chastising me, I'll tell you a funny story, because I think bringing this could get really dark, but I'm going to stay in the dark place, but I'm going to bring in the light and bring in the humor because I find that being funny can really help people understand something. We spend our years working for other companies avoiding getting in trouble. And let me tell you, I'm that girl. As a young girl, I would never have gone to school without my homework done. I had some sort of worrywart gene where there was no way I was walking in a classroom and not having like the superb paper done. And on days or whatever where an accidental miss or something occurred, it plagued me. So I was a good student. I was a straight A student. And I tell you this because I grew up to be an excellent employee. I always gave the full time that I was paid more. I worked late. I was the first volunteer for extra. I did my job to the T.
Wow.
And I was in so much trouble the last year that I was employed, that I was not working for myself. I was pulled into HR like 4 times. And I want to tell you, and I don't want to give away anything that's personal because people can connect the dots to where I worked last. One of those times, the first time that I ended up in HR, this is where you become self-aware that you're like really unchaining yourself from whatever. I had walked 12 years as a soldier within this army's troops, if you will, and as a sergeant, really, for other people. And I wanted to go out and speak. I had a desire. I was evolving. I wanted to go. I was getting asked by people to speak. My social media was starting to pick up. And my company did not want me to go speak. They felt like that was not the best use of my time. And I think they didn't understand how social media worked either, in all honesty. So I don't think they thought about the good attraction that was for their brand, and it would have been.
Huge, yeah.
Yep, they were just seeing it as like me being selfish. They were making me feel as though I was being selfish. And even though I think that's a wrong assessment, on a day that I got asked for a really big stage speech for a keynote for a huge conference, I was told by my company I couldn't go. So in that moment, and I don't know why, it was like that moment with Stockholm syndrome, like you've been a prisoner for 12 years and then you see a crack in the door and you run for it. I literally said, well, I will be going and I will be doing the speech, but I'll be taking a personal day, and it's fine that you're not going to pay me for my time, and I won't put your brand on there. And they said, I don't think you understand. We're telling you you can't go. And I said, I don't think you understand. You don't own me. I'm a person and I work for you. And so I'm taking a personal day because you know what? In 12 years, you've given me 5 weeks vacation for 6 and I've taken 2 and they haven't rolled over. And I have personal days. And if you don't agree with this, then you can meet me in HR. And this was a big senior boss. And he said, well, let's go right now. I said, let's go. So we walked into HR, unexpected, head of HR, who was also the company's attorney, sat us down. We told both of our sides. And the attorney said, she's correct. She's a free person. She can do whatever she wants. Well, when you do what you want and it's against what senior management wants, it's never a good thing. It's the beginning of the breakdown of a relationship. I went to that stage. I gave one of the best keynotes. I want to tell you, sitting in the audience was Housing Wire, NMP Magazine, MPA Magazine. And from that single speaking, I got 8 more speaking engagements. And I want to tell you, over the next year, I went to all 8. I took all 8 and I used every one of my personal, and I gave a big middle finger to the company I was working for, because at that time, that's the direction I wanted to go. So I feel like I could not have held back the evolution. We all are going to reach some point in our lives where we're going to shed the skin we're in. I really believe this is, if you look at science and you look at, molting, and you look at evolutionary renewing, and even if you go get a facial, like they're stripping your face of like the layers of dead skin that we're carrying around on us. I digress, but my point was I was shedding, and there was nothing I could have done about it at that point. However, the truth is they saw me as defiant, and I was, and the statement you just read is that I knew, and I wanted anyone that read this book who might have thought from that company that I was going to write a bad story about my ending there. The truth is those 12 years bore me great wealth, great opportunity, promotions, strengthened my resume. I have nothing but love. Let me restate this. Most of what I have for that company is love and gratitude. There are people and incidents I don't love in the ending of my story, bad actors that didn't help my cause or quest, but in truth, they weren't where I was. And so I became this big, I would say, what's the opposite of an ally? I became this person that was fighting against everything I had promoted for 12 years. And so I was just breaking free. And so at that intersection, to become who people thought I was and who I was trying to say I was, it was more important than ever that my language, my behavior, and everything I did going forward from that point was aligned. And so this is where you and I meet. This is where this story is born. This is where all this happens. And I will say with this chapter, if you today have misgivings about yourself, guilt, shame, or anything, nothing you're doing currently is out of your control. When you begin to think you can't control the bad things you do, your mind has to get more powerful than your physical activity. We are all going to fall victim to physical things and addictions and unsavory acts, and you have to be self-aware of what makes you not feel good. I noticed with the gossiping thing, when I would get off the phone with a girlfriend that would call me and bitch about other women or people in the company, I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't feel good about the last year. I could have left that company in a much better way. They honored me on the way out, and I couldn't have asked for more considering the punches I was giving them. I mean, on the way out, I was flailing. I said I got pulled in 4 times. The next 3 times I got written up. And I was all the way to the point because I was caught saying F you to this leader and F you to that leader. I got pulled in by the CEO, and he basically said, like, look, you've got to pull it together or you're going to need to leave. And within a month of that conversation, I had a lunch and I threw myself on the sword and I said, I can't pull it together and I can't stop. And I don't like this person and what I see here and what I see there. And as a result, I'm letting myself out the back door. I promised you if I couldn't lead integrally, I would leave. And that's what happened. And I do think it allowed me to walk away. I was asked to give a final dissertation, and I think from a legal standpoint, they wanted to mitigate liability. And I literally sat down, and for 3 hours, it was the first time in my life I didn't say what I thought they wanted to hear. And I said what I meant. And I said what was wrong with them. And I said what was corrupt. And I said what was unintegral. And I thanked them for the time that I had spent there. And I wished them luck in their endeavors in the future. And I walked away. Not quietly, not easily, and not compliantly. And the point from there that I go forward is where I begin to then work on myself and become who I believed in my heart that I was. And today I operate from that place. I'm not perfect. The other day, I repeated something to somebody that somebody else told me, didn't realize it till after. And it bit me in the ass because that person ended up repeating it to somebody else. And then somebody called me. And I said, I broke my own vow. Like I always say, I don't gossip. I tell everybody, I've written it in my book. I've committed to myself not to do it. I do have a rule of I'll talk about something if it's helping and healing. And in that moment, I do think I thought I was operating from that place, but it was a good reminder. And even though there's not a lot of casualty here, and I ended up standing in that conflict and accepting responsibility, and moving past it, I think it's a great reminder that we have to really be careful with other people's stories and other people's information and, so on and so forth. So I'm grateful to God. I hope I'm going to continuously be helping people improve. And the very last thing I'll say on this subject is I have a mom who I've written about in this book in 4 or 5 places, and I've tried to honor her because she's an incredible woman. And she's a hardworking woman, and she's a survivor and a fighter in the world. And she's, I don't want to say she's uneducated, but she's untamed is a great word that I'll use. And I think from lack of proper domesticization as a child, she has things that she could unlearn. And I'm pretty abrasive with her. If anybody's been around me when she's doing something that I don't like, or I don't think is integral, or I don't think should be said, I'm very vocal. I found a better way to share, a softer way. I'm finding a softer me this year in saying things to people that need to change. And she's changed, like in the last year with losing my sister, her firstborn, she's changed. And she's more caring. She's starting to slow down before she speaks, and she's thinking a little more. I see refrain in her at times. And so I feel like I'm doing her a great service too, because I know it'll strengthen her relationships, and I know that it will help. And I feel grateful to God that you've helped me go on this journey, because look at how I'm able to pay all of this forward today to other people.
Christine, feelings mutual. And in closing, someone's listening to this right now that is thinking, wait, I'm in Christine's position right now, where I work or what I've been a part of. So you have you got a minute with them. What's your counsel?
Listen to that inner wiring. We are wired. The book starts from a place where I say we are wired consciously. And I know there's exceptional, we watch crime shows every day where we see that wiring broken. Don't look at that for a minute. 99% of us in the world have proper wiring, and our wiring tells us we are doing good or we are doing bad. Some people call it religion. Some people call it spirit. I'm telling you, it's our human makeup. There is something inside of us that is driving us to do good. We aren't fighting evil. We're fighting good. We are fighting the hard work it takes to be aligned with our GPS, that's barometer is pointing to good. We are meant to do good. We have to allow ourselves to get there. And there's other things that are going to work against that barometer. Our physical attraction is going to pull us away from our logical knowledge of what's good and bad. Okay. And if we can become aware ahead of that, I would love to spend time with youth. I spend a lot of time talking about date rape. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and ending, but I just spoke at the national conference at the MBA on my book, Clear Boundaries. And there's a chapter in the book. And I say, I don't blame the boys for that. I say, ladies, it's a mystery to everyone in the world how we can reflect 20 years later as to something that might have violated us and not known it in the night and raised our hand and said, I suffered a tragedy tonight and I have trauma that's going to change me for the rest of my life. Because we don't take responsibility for the 5 yeses we said that led us down the path, that put us in the place where we can't say no because we feel like we brought ourselves to that table. Where do we get ahead of our physicalness to have the control over these situations? Because our own physicalness will drive us to places. So I urge everybody that's listening to get a copy of the book, not because I want to sell the book so much as, and anyone that's written books know you don't really get rich unless you're a New York bestseller, but I truly believe this book, if you sit with it, it's a 5 or 6 hour read. People say they can't set it down when they start. Whether you know me or you have never, ever known me, if you have something in your life where you feel you could level up and get better and get more honest, read this book, because this book is going to help you, and it's going to help you be a better parent. It's going to help you be a better spouse. It's going to help you be a better leader. It's going to help you be a better daughter, son, sister, brother, all of those things. And so that's it. It's a path towards betterment.